Thank you, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we would like to start our summit with very interesting session on navigating climate action and industry transition. I would like to take a minute here and inform all our participants that you can access all the summit-related information by scanning the QR code, which is provided on your badges. And as already said, this year we are pleased to present the exhibition by startups on sustainability solutions. We kindly encourage all of you to visit the stalls during the breaks, and the stalls are set up near the Inspire Hall near the staircase. The G20 India and COP28 emphasize industry's pivotal role in reducing emissions and advancing climate goals, with accountability across the value chain as a key focus. In this session, the distinguished panel members will deliberate and exploring equitable solutions for a low-carbon transition, for fostering collaboration on low-carbon technologies, and aligning international climate and trade policies. I welcome the esteemed panelists on the dais and request the session chair and moderator, Mr. K.S. Venkatagiri, Executive Director, CII Godrej Green Business Center, to lead the discussion on this important topic, navigating climate action and industry transition. Please.
Thank you, friends. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My pleasure and privilege to be here and to moderate this session, coordinate this session on navigating climate action and industry transition. Emery Lovins once famously said, climate change is largely related to industrialization and industries. But he added a rider. He said, but only industry leadership can take the climate change impacts out. So industry, which has been largely responsible for some of the impacts of climate change, can also take a leadership role in taking us out of the issues which we have been facing right now, which Seema also very beautifully articulated. This has also been recognized at the last COP28 at UAE, where industry action, industry's efforts to come out of this problem has been very well recognized. And industry leadership has also been working very closely on decarbonization, circularity, net zero. Many initiatives have been taken. Having said that, there is also a good news. Good news is that climate action and environmental initiative were thought to be a cause some time back. There was a big debate of profits or environment about 20, 30 years back. Now, whether it was earlier, whether it is green or profits, then it became green and profits. Now it's profits through green. Let me give you an example, share with you an example which CII has been very closely involved with for a long time. The building sector, the green building movement started somewhere in 2000. When the movement started, the cost of a green building was about 25 to 30% higher. So there was a huge debate on whether to go in for green buildings, what would be the economic paybacks of a green building. Over a period of time, because of substantial efforts by the Indian stakeholders on green building, what was about 20,000 square feet in 2003, 2004 has become 12 billion square feet right now. 12 billion square feet of green buildings are coming up all over the country. CII, through the Indian Green Building Council, has been facilitating it. And this 12 billion makes India the second largest in the world in terms of green building. I request all of you to join in congratulating each one of you and congratulating all the stakeholders of the country in making this happen. India has been demonstrating this leadership on green building. And with the green building movement, there has also been a change in the competitiveness of the way green buildings are built and operated. Earlier, as I said, it was about 25 to 30% more expensive. Then it became cost economic. The operating costs were able to pay back the additional investment which are made. But right now we have reached a stage. Where if you construct a green building of the highest order, the initial investments are about 2 to 3% lower. So you save on the initial cost, you save on the operating cost. So it's become a big win-win for all the stakeholders, whether you are a green building owner or you are a person involved in construction of the green building or operating of the buildings. The other big difference which we see, many of us who started our career with environment about 30, 40 years back, majority of those who were on side of green or on side of environment were those who are not found to be suitable in any other area. If somebody is not good in operations, somebody was not good in technical services, somebody is not good in maintenance, he said, you put him in charge of ETP. That used to be the paradigm about 30, 40 years back. But things have changed substantially. Many of the bright minds are right now getting more and more involved at the cause of environment. We have three brilliant speakers who are going to be here, who are going to share with you their experiences, their knowledge, and their wisdom in terms of what they have been able to do. It's my privilege to introduce the three speakers of the inaugural section. All three of them are unique in their own ways. Dr. Ingve, Chief Sustainability and Chief Security Officer of the Radisson Hotel Group. Many of us know Radisson has been one of the largest groups, more than 1,300 hotels all over the world. Several sustainability initiatives have been taken by the Radisson Group. And Dr. Ingve has been one of the very prominent personalities of an environment, have been recognized at several for her green initiatives. I request all of you to join me in welcoming Dr. Ingve, and we look forward to her suggestions, her words of experience and wisdom. I have a few questions for you, Dr. Ingve. I leave it to you to share whatever you think is appropriate for the entire audience. All three of you, based on our limited knowledge, we have articulated some questions, but whatever you think is appropriate for this audience, please feel free to share them with the audience. The hotel sector has been growing, and there has been a sudden substantial increase in number of people going out of their home places and staying at resorts and other places, particularly after the COVID pandemic. How do you think the green initiatives are being taken by the hotel sector? How is it the conflict between the profitability and greening, profitability and environmental sustainability has been tackled by you? You have excellent experiences on this. I would like you to share them with us. Secondly, ma'am, hotels and resorts, a lot of inflow of people to a city, particularly those which have fragile ecosystems. There are also some issues in terms of the damage it could create to the local environment and the fragile ecosystem. How do you think what Radisson has been doing, how do you think the sector should address it? Maybe it will be good if you can address them. Secondly, we have another interesting expert, my good friend Mr. Prabodh Acharya, who is a group's Chief Sustainability Officer of the JSW Steel Limited. One of the biggest impacts which can be made is by the hard-to-abate sector. The advantage of the hard-to-abate sectors is they have a huge impact on the carbon footprint, but they also have a very big advantage. A small step by a few dedicated and committed people like JSW Limited and Prabodh Acharya can make a big difference to the overall impact in the world. So we are privileged to have Mr. Prabodh Acharya, a seasoned sustainability expert from both the steel and cement sector. We have had the privilege of listening to him. Thank you, Prabodh Acharya, for being with us. A big hand to him for being here. JSW have doing phenomenal work. Some of the sustainability initiatives of JSW have been amazing. They are one of the Green Pro-rated organization and product manufacturers. I would request you to speak about some of the new technologies like carbon capture and utilization, green hydrogen, electrification. How are these things going to impact the steel sector? And secondly, there have been some international regulations. I'm sure an organization like JSW would be much ahead of the regulations like CBAM, which could impact the profitability and competitiveness of steel sector. I would request you to address that. Thirdly, we have another interesting person, a person who can add a different dimension to the whole issue of transition and navigating climate action, Mr. James Abraham, founder and director of My Net Zero Carbon. James has been an old friend of CII, has been involved with management consulting with BCG, and then he was the founder of a company called Solar Arise, much before solar became extremely profitable. One of the early companies, startups on solar, which proved that the solar energy could be generated at a cost lower than the fossil fuel based energy. James, I would like you to address on the management perspective, how you can move people towards the direction of sustainability. Not just the top management, but also all of us, the common people. How do you think, what type of behavior we should have, what type of direction each one of us should have on our individual habits, so that all of us together can move towards the area of sustainability. And James is one who have been working extensively on technology. You know, nowadays there have been a news item which said, you think and you have an answer on your mobile phone. There's been somebody else also remarked, you think and the answer comes to you automatically inside your mind. Technology can make it happen. James, I would request you to talk about the technology aspects and how technology and behavior can help us move towards net zero and sustainability over a period of time. So, ladies and gentlemen, without much further ado and wasting time, I would like to hand over to each of the panelists. Request them to speak for about 6 to 7 minutes, and then we will open it up for questions. Over to you, ma'am, for your initial remarks. You can sit there wherever you think you are comfortable. About 6 to 7 minutes, please.
Absolutely. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Mr. Venkatagiri, for this kind introduction. So I'm happy to be here from Europe and, of course, meet with our India team. I'm with Radisson Hotel Group, so we are obviously a service industry business with 26 years of presence here in India and a substantial local team. We have 1,400 hotels around the world in 10 brands, and 180 of these hotels are here in India. So we jokingly say that there is a Radisson hotel at about every 3 hours drive here in India. Of course, that's electrical driving, because a lot of these hotels are being equipped with EV chargers, and we want to make that every 2 hours, obviously. So one of the things that is important to know about Radisson is that we are a sustainability pioneer committed to become net zero by 2050. And that is based on science-based targets. So for the group, we have approved science-based targets, both near-term, 2030, and net zero targets, which include scope 3. Now, for us as a business, you referred to that, we have, as many businesses, quite a big scope 3. Because in our operations, we are a company that operates hotels, but we don't own the real estate. So that means that a very important part of our value chain is actually the owners, the real estate owners, who own the real estate and who have to put up the capex to move to net zero. So they are a key partner in our value chain to work on net zero and advance on that. The other part, of course, of our value chain is also in our scope 3. A very big portion of our business is franchised hotels. So all the franchised hotels fall under scope 3. They can be big companies. You have groups that are really in the franchising business of hundreds of franchise, 100, 120 franchise hotels, but many of those are SMEs. So we have SMEs in our scope 3 of our core business of the hotels that operate under the Radisson brand, and we have scope 3 in our value chain. All of that to paint you a picture of how our net zero transition is happening and what are the components of that. Now, as Radisson, we have been doing sustainability for a very long time. We have Scandinavian origins, so back in '89, we already had an environmental policy, but of course the demand and the speed and the scale at which we need to work on decarbonization now is pressing. So I'll tell you a little bit about the successes. We have, thanks to our focus on ESG and decarbonization, we have been able to reduce our carbon intensity by 35% compared to 2019. That is due to the actions we take on greening our buildings. Well, and when I say our buildings, it's actually the buildings of the asset owners. It's greening the energy, so moving increasingly to renewable energy, and greening operations. Now, one of the things I want to say is that we believe that every hotel in this portfolio, in the 180 hotels we have in India, you will find hotels that are maybe 50 rooms. We have a brand called Radisson Individuals Retreats, which are typically the smaller hotels. We grow a lot in tier 2, tier 3 locations. So those hotels may be 50, 60 rooms, typically family-owned businesses, so SMEs. We have hotels like here, the Radisson Blu Plaza, close to the airport in Delhi, hundreds of rooms, almost 500 rooms. So huge businesses, big hotels that have the capability to have sophisticated MEP technical systems and bigger teams to manage those hotels. And we believe that this whole diversity of the portfolio in Radisson can actually be brought to net zero. But of course, you need to realize that these hotels are at very different places of maturity on this journey. And that's why we are working very hard in our group, but also in the industry. We work, for example, with the WTTC and the Hotel Association of India, not on our own, but to collectively work with our peers who are competitors, colleagues, to work on creating tools, awareness, and a clear pathway for all these type of hotels. So the big palaces, the flagship hotels you know in India so well from the big brands and from us, but also the smaller ones which are developing. Because today, in India, a lot of the growth is in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So that may be, I would say, the environments where the awareness is lower on this net zero journey. So we see some challenges. The challenges are, of course, that the cost for decarbonization is big, and the conversation is who is carrying that cost of the capex for green buildings and green energy. Secondly, there is also a jungle of certifications, a jungle of communication. I mean, you must all be travelers. I'm sure that it's hard for everyone in this room to realize what is really a sustainable hotel. And we are trying to clarify that jungle of certifications, because you know that a recent research from Skift showed that 50% of the travelers only trust verified or certified eco-labels, and 70 to 80% of travelers actually want to stay in sustainable hotels, but they don't know what is a sustainable hotel. And then thirdly, we see some challenges with clean innovation, so clean tech innovation in hotels, for example, innovative cooling, as an example. And it's hard to find good conditions to have sandboxes to test these innovations and scale them. So I can talk about some examples, but maybe we'll leave it at that. I think we want to talk about the regulatory context and the facilitation. We have been able to pioneer certain things. For example, excuse me, we have pioneered in the renewable energy space a hotel, the Radisson Blu Nashik, which has gone on group captive. So they run 100% on renewable electricity, thanks to a group captive setup with community offsite renewables. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because it was really a breakthrough project. This mechanism exists in India and is very well developed, but not for the volumes that we have in the hotel industry. So typically, one hotel, the consumption of one hotel is not big enough to interest the developers of group captive. So it's really a breakthrough and a pioneering moment that we had when we could bring one of these hotels on group captive. And so this is the way we are innovating with green buildings, with LEED certifications, with green energy, renewable energy, and with green operations. Thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant, ma'am. You beautifully articulated. They have historically has a long sustainability policy with a policy dating back to 1989 when Radisson had started with the environment policy. She spoke about the different levels of maturity of the different hotels, which have 50 rooms to 500 rooms, the different levels of maturity, and about the challenges of who would bear the cost of sustainability. But then she also through the positive side of the entire the hotel business, people would like to stay in hotels which are sustainable, which are certified as sustainable. But then there is still a challenge of a lot of certifications, and which certification is a true certification of the greenness of these hotels. And lastly, she spoke about how policy can be taken advantage of. They have taken advantage of the group captive policy. People generally complain about policy. She made a very positive remark of how the group captive policy was made use of in Nashik to convert the hotel to a less carbon intensive hotel. Thank you very much. We would definitely have some questions for you. Thank you. A big hand to Ms. Engwe. May I now request Mr. Prabodh Acharya for his remarks, please. 7-8 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Giri. I think, thank you very much for a generous introductions. It resonates one point you stated very well, that how we have graduated from back bench to front bench in the corporate world. It's very much resonates with me at least. Good morning, friends. Let me start with facts and figures before I answer specific questions what my moderator has posed. We all very much aware that the importance of remaining within 1.5 degree, but last StockTech tells us we need to reduce 7% of emissions annually. That means from 2019, we need to reduce 43% of our emission by 2030, 7% every year. What's happening? We are increasing 1.5% of emissions every year from 19 till 2022. So that's where we stand. Industrial sector, which is almost responsible for 1/3 of emissions, we take that responsibility. We must demonstrate the leadership to bend the curve. But we need to also recognize the fact that many of those so-called disruptive technologies are not going to be financially viable before 2030. So these are the challenges. Now, if we need to address these challenges as the industry sectors, because I sincerely believe the businesses are responsible for solving societal problems. So we should not be part of the problem, we should be part of the solutions. Sima, thank you very much for highlighting the opportunity that it presents in the opening statement. Now here are my 6 pointers how we can drive and enhance it. The first thing, we need to accelerate. When I tell we all, business and industry, we need to accelerate supply side emissions. The push has to be there. So therefore, Inge, thank you congratulations for taking a science-based target. I think we all need to do science-aligned targets, mostly short-term targets. Because long-term targets, I can understand, and many times it happens that we overestimate the short-term targets but underestimate the long-term targets. And therefore, it is very much essential to have that and push it. The second levers what we must do is enable customers to make choices which are greener. That is the pull mechanism. That is the demand. We need to all work towards creating demand side to enable that the push happens. So we have to have a balance between push and pull. Third point I want to say that we all, wherever we are working, we must drive change in our own sectors. And that's very essential. To give an example, I think Mr. Venkatgiri, you talked about JSW. I remember one thing, when I joined this group 4 years before, we make steel, we make cement, we also make energy. And we also do infrastructure, paints and all those things. In energy business, we were 30% renewable, 70% thermal. Now after 4 years, it has reversed. We are 70% renewable and 30% thermal. That is a significant change in business transformation. What I want to say that if you want to really bend the curve, the business has to transform the business systems. And that is very much essential. And that is one example I just wanted to say. The other example I want to say, even in the steel sector, we understand the disruptive technology is a long way to come by, but should we stand or do nothing? And that is where we started a program called SEED, Sustainable Energy, Environment and Decarbonization, with help of a big consultant. And we estimated that if we can optimize our current asset, we can reduce almost 18 million ton of emissions by 2030 from a baseline scenario. To just give an impression, this is equivalent to taking out 3.5 million ICE engine cars from the road, or is equivalent to annual emission of Sri Lanka. So that is a power of doing things which you can do with your existing asset, with the existing operation, by changing the minds of the people. If each one of us are determined to make the changes, we can make a huge impact. That is one other example I wanted to say. The fourth point, which is very essential, is the collaboration, is the cross-industry partnership. Now, if I take the steel industry, we cannot make all the changes by ourselves. We need feedstock change. We need green hydrogen supply. We need raw material supply. We need also demand for the green products. So, and we need academia, research, public organizations like thought leaders like CII, all to work together. So collaboration is very much essential. We don't think of being successful on your own. We need to all be successful, or we'll all be failure. We are entering to a binary world, right? The fifth point, which I want to make, is advocate and support bolder policies. Whether you like it or not, each one of us have to pay price for carbon emissions. So we need those policies to enable, push for decarbonizations. And fiscal incentives are very much essential. And I believe carbon need to be costed at just price. When I say just price, I consider that equity need to be taken into account, but it need to be priced sooner than later. The last point, which is really an important point, we cannot achieve without finances being available. And transition financing has a bigger role now than in future. To give a figure, if I talk about steel industry itself, globally, we require almost $5 to $6 trillion to make this sector green. And in India itself, where the sector is growing, we require almost $283 billion to make these changes. So where from these finances will come? Finance comes for business growth. And that is where I'll address your question very quickly. In this, specifically your question related to steel sector, and at JSW, we particularly look at climate change and a business opportunity we need to really take advantage of. And it pays. But at the same time, there will be some technology which are not financially viable. It requires little push, and that will be the role of transition financing. The disruptive technology will come. They will come faster than you can imagine. We have seen that happening in thermals, in solar energy or renewable sector, and believe it is going to come. Faster we adapt, scale it up faster, will be an advantage. And we want to take that leadership, whether it comes to a technology which is carbon capture or utilization. We are already running a 100 ton per day carbon capture facility. We want to escalate and put it another 300 ton per day. And we want to use carbon as a product, look that as a business opportunity rather than only decarbonization measure. Because believe me, nothing moves if it is not financially viable. Because we all are in business. So we have to find a solution which is financially viable. Green hydrogen, another technology which is promising in the steel sector decarbonization and many industrial decarbonizations. There we are already putting a 25 megawatt electrolyzer which will come in force by next year. It's under construction, so that will supply to JSW Steel. So again, this is a beautiful collaboration for various companies, like JSW Energy will produce it and steel will consume it, so that we can learn how we can scale it up and become cost effective when it comes to future. Third point, last point, you wanted me to touch on the CBAM or carbon as a attribute for the trade. Again, whether you like it or not, this is going to be increasingly be integrated. The carbon is going to be integrated, or environmental attributes per se are going to be integrated in the trade. Whether it is going to do good or bad, I reserve my comment on that, but I still consider that is a trade barrier. But one good thing is that possibly that can push for decarbonization in other geographies, and I think Europe is taking a lead on that. The impact, what is likely to cause, if you look at Indian steel sector, which is growing rapidly, we are growing primarily to take care of our domestic demand. If I look at the last year statistics, almost 4.5 million ton, 4.8 million ton precisely, we exported to Europe out of 146 million ton we produce. So that's account to around 3% of our production is going to Europe, which is not really significant. I think we need to, I keep on telling that we need to focus on 97% of our consumption, so how we can meet the demand of our domestic demand and provide the alternative that our consumers are satisfied with greener products. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer any further follow-up questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Very brilliantly articulated 6 pointers, accelerate, enable customers to make good choices, do change in your own sector before you start working with others, collaborate, advocate bolder policies, and lastly, finance is something which is very important. 3 points which I wanted to highlight what Mr. Prabodh Acharya made. He said, look at short-term targets, long-term, 2070, many of us are dead. So have short-term target. This is the one which can make things happen. Mr. Godrej used to give a brilliant example. You tell a young man you take a walk every day, you don't get a heart attack when you are 65. Very highly likely that he would not do. But then tell him that you go to a gym, work out, there's a likelihood of you getting a girlfriend. He might, very highly likely that he would do it. So look at short-term targets, which also could contribute to your long-term advantage. The third very important point he mentioned was don't wait for the technology to evolve. Participate in it. He mentioned about how JSW Steel is working on both in terms of carbon capture utilization as well as green hydrogen initiatives of the group, and look at it as a major business opportunity. The industry can look at climate change mitigation and low carbon transition as a business opportunity. Things would happen happen automatically. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your a big hand to Mr. Prabodh Acharya. Now over to my friend James, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I thought I was going to talk about something completely different. Then listening to both Inge and Prabodh, I realized it's a natural transition. One of the things that's always elated me over the last little while is that sitting with chief sustainability officers, how much their lives have changed. It used to be in the old days, they would struggle for some board recognition. They would struggle to get the measures and the ideas out there. Today, they're talking about investment, strategy, progress. And it's really an exciting change to see all the things that are happening in hotels and steels. And I'm sure if you have conversations, you'll hear the same thing. But now we're at a critical juncture when strategies are starting to get realized, strategies are starting to get articulated. And I remember this phrase I learned in my old consulting career. In fact, I think I learned this in my work with CII, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So all the strategies we had never really worked until we could, and this, I want to pick up what you said, Prabodha, that you have to change the minds, change the hearts of people to actually make it work. And you asked this question, Giri, like how will that work, especially when it comes to climate? This is where all of my work is today, and how will technology work? So I'm going to take a risk, and I'm going to ask you a question. I'm hoping this works. Looking at the fact that most of you are young, this might work. All right, raise your hand if you've ever used a step counter, a calorie counter, an exercise tracker, or anything like this. Wow, that's actually better than I thought. How many people, when they used it, actually became healthier, took more steps, exercised a little bit more? Okay, half as many. Not that bad. I think there's something really telling about tech and this journey that we all had to health. And what we're trying to do is apply that learning into climate. So let's talk about building a climate culture that supports the success of climate strategy. And it starts with three things. The first is personalization. The issue with climate and the conversations we have, 1.5 degrees, 2100, net zero by 2050, it feels like not us, not me, not you and me. And in fact, if I ask you, and I'm not going to ask you now, but if I ask you, do you know your personal climate impact? Most of you would probably say no. Maybe a few of you have gone and tried to do a tracker. But if I asked you another one, do you know the impact of individual choices that you make every day? Again, maybe you have an inkling, but you may not know. So I think our first struggle, if we want to reach hearts and minds, is personalization. And that's the tech that we have. It's called MYNZO. You can use it right now. Prabodha downloaded it when we were talking during the break. That's the first step it takes. It personalizes your emissions, just like your step tracker, calorie counter, and all of that. But if you notice the people who raised their hands and who said, yes, I did become better at more steps, I became more healthier. If you ask them why, it's the second part of culture, which is building communities. They talked to others who were counting and said, oh, you did 10,000 yesterday? Oh, I didn't catch up. The next day I'm going to do 20 just to catch up. You remember those conversations? Or I can't believe he actually ran 5K from couch. I think I can do it too. Remember those conversations? That's the same thing in climate. When we start to see others who are engaged in this same journey, we actually embrace that journey. This has been a consistent study done around every culture. It is not language or national specific, but every human being changes when others do. You don't change because you make more money. You don't change because it's lower cost. You don't change because you look prettier. No, maybe you will change, you'll look prettier. But most of the time, it's because somebody else has changed. So the second aspect of this tech and this ability is to create communities. And our focus is to create communities in companies, and I'll talk about why that happens later. The third element, again, if you look at your health journey, is about success. Nobody will change unless they can see success. Nobody will wait to 2030, 2050, or 2100 to see success. That's why your point about short term is very, very important. You want to be able to see success today. And that's also part of the way we've built this, that once we have personalization and communities, we have this road to success. You actually start to see success every month, every 6 months, every year, And it just keeps building, small changes that aggregate in groups. Now, these are the three elements that takes to build a culture. And why do I talk about we need to do this in companies first? You know, every day we wake up in the morning and we go to work, and this is a community that already exists. And it's a community, it's one of our largest communities, and it's a community where we spent a lot of time. It's also a community that, thanks to the CSOs that are sitting here, have money, have strategy, and have an intent to get to net zero. And so that's actually the perfect community to start to activate on this culture. As colleagues and friends working together, when you create that culture, the strategies and the numbers that the CSOs want to achieve becomes much, much easier. And let me flip this on the other side too. You talked about, Prabodha, about companies and firms should be solving societal problems and not just creating them. So you notice one of the partners here is Life, which is Life for Environment. Life for Environment is exactly about this, right? Creating a national or a global consciousness that is sustainable, that is climate friendly. This afternoon, when the Honorable Minister comes, I understand that his talk is about sustainable conscious world. Again, this idea of creating culture in the world. We've seen that when this culture exists in companies, it seeps into society. If you start where the communities already exist, it starts to influence the societies in which these companies operate. And that's why if we want to achieve any of those laudable goals of having a climate-conscious world and communities, it starts by creating companies like this. A lot of our clients who are starting to use this, I hear this interesting phrase, and I'm going to end it with this. One of our companies says, we want to be a net zero bank, and we want to say, and so are our people. We are a net zero construction company, and so are our people. We are green steel, and so are our people. You know, our hotel people, our hotels are all green, and so are our people. And this idea that it's not just an organization, but it's individuals, that's what will change, really accelerate all the work that we need to do between now and the next 10, 15 years to really make a change. Thank you.
Brilliant, James. We had spoken about buildings and hotels, then about hard-to-abate sectors like steel, and then James takes us to a different dimension of creating a culture within the company, and then taking that culture from the company to the society, and all of us become net zero over a period of time. So friends, we have about another 7-8 minutes for questions. I know all of you are as knowledgeable as the people on the stage. I'm sure many of you have got a lot of ideas to share. But we would like to make use of this time, 7 or 8 minutes, for asking pointed questions to the experts on the stage. You know, what is the quality of a good question? The quality of a good question, the attribute of a good question is what the person who is answering is very happy to answer. You know? Arjuna asked a question, Bhagavad Gita resulted. Small question, sharp. If you have some opinions to make, we will do that at a separate session. But right now, mention your name and then ask the question as sharp as possible so that many get an opportunity to ask questions. So open, please. Sir. Can you have a mic, please?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Very interesting points by all the speakers. I am Rahul Banerjee. I'm the Managing Director at Rice & House. We are a policy think tank and specialize in foreign policy planning. My question would be to Mr. Acharya. Mr. Acharya, with JSW being very specifically in the energy sector, how do you enable just transition and trickle down the gains of this just transition to the communities that you're based out of? How do you enable the communities to experience that just transition? Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul. That's very good question you asked me. See, a world is still grappling how the just transition will look like, but let me give my experience, or JSW, how we look at just transition. So we look from two lenses. One, that how do we manage our own people who are working with us? The second most important thing, that how we manage the people who are dependent on us. That's the community. So we work in two fronts. One, we understand as the technology is changing or going to change, this will impact our own people. But I will answer the second part because that's for your question. Let me give a specific example what we have done rather than talking about theory. I stated in JSW Energy, which example you picked up, where we are massively putting renewable energies. And specifically, the growth is happening on solar than the rest of the other renewable. So in the solar, you have to have land. Without land, you cannot put solar energy. And in India, the landholders are small landholder, all like any other advanced countries. And there the challenge comes because our food security depends on the farmers and the farmlands. And we are taking away those lands for putting up the solar energy, which we are creating indirectly. We are stripping them their livelihood. Even if you pay them compensation, that doesn't continue for the generations. Second thing, you restrict the access to making the farmland, the cultivation to happen. So what we have done, we recently put up a 225 megawatt solar plant very close to our steel plant to supply. We experimented with large height solar panels. So we increased the solar panels and provided access to do cultivations inside.
Oh.
That is under the roofs. So thereby, we ensure that the food security continues along with the energy security. And that is a beautiful example of, you are welcome to come and visit us. The impact, we understand by increasing the height, the cost, the capex is going to increase, and which impact increased. But we took that conscious decision to start looking at how it impacts, and we are very successful in doing that. And we want to replicate that across. This is one of the examples. So we are looking at, various aspects, we are looking at how we are going to take care of our people when the technology changes, but this is what we are looking at communities. This is one of the examples I just wanted to say. We are very happy also the cost increases because we also produce steel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yourself, please. You wanted to ask. Quickly, sir. So we will take 3 questions together so that we will save on time. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you so much for such an enlightening discussion. So I'm Gaurav, I'm the founder of Ugreen Technology. We are working in carbon capture. So my question is to Mr. Acharya. Sir, when you were talking about, you mentioned that you see sustainability, the group sees sustainability as a business opportunity. So apart from the renewable space, is there any business that you have done in this particular space and that actually has given you profits and increased your sales or anything? And also you mentioned about collaborations. So is the group such big as JSW willing to collaborate or partner with a startup?
Thank you. Sir, Mr. Harishchandra Prasad, please. Yeah. Here. Hey.
Okay. So I was a polluter. I was doing coal-based power plants, fossil fuel-based power plants. So I sold all my assets now, and I'm developing a non-profit 400 acres biodiversity park near Hyderabad. So does it excite you to set up a hotel there?
Yeah. We'll take one more. Yeah, you, ma'am. Then to you, sir.
Hi, I'm Sudha, and my question is to all the CSOs on the panel and also in this room, is how much of what you're doing is driven by a necessity to comply with changing regulations across the world, rather than actual, because you believe that the planet is going to implode at a certain point. And the second thing would be for Mr. Acharya is that I'm a British citizen, so I've been reading stories about Port Talbot and what is happening with the steel plants there. When you change to greener technology and you're going to definitely lose employees, do you have a strategy? What are you all thinking? What is going to happen? I think the biggest challenge I see is where are all these people going to go? What are they going to work? What is going to happen? So who's thinking about them? Yeah.
Thank you. You, sir. Here, a mic here, please. Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Sandeep from Ministry of Arts Sciences. My question is to Ms. Inge and maybe partially to Mr. Acharya. The science is very dynamic and so as the technology. So it's the evolution of the science and technology together achieving the sustainability is sometimes become expensive for achieving the sustainability for you and accommodate your business tactics. So how do you find this challenge towards achieving the sustainability in accommodating the dynamicity of the science and the technology?
Thank you. Over to you, please. Yeah.
Yes, okay, so it's about the financing, correct, if I understand your question? First, the hotel, yeah, okay. Thank you very much for those questions. So first about the hotel, I think absolutely, I'm not the developer, but I have a direct line to our developers. So I think if you're talking about developing hotels in a community or in a biodiversity-rich environment, we have to do it right. So we are doing resorts, for example. We have 130 resorts around the world. And every time we are doing this in an environment that is rich in biodiversity, we take that into account. We are doing this in Africa. We are doing this in the island nations where we develop. And that has to be part also of the design of the property, of the way the property, for example, works with getting fresh water, works with renewables on site, and also invests in the biodiversity on site with biodiversity restoration. We are, for example, also a signatory to the principles for nature-based tourism that the WTTC has issued across the sector. So that's also an example of collaboration. So I think we need to do this, we can do it, and we need to do it right. I also want to talk maybe about the financing that the question was from the other gentleman. Financing is key, of course, if we need to step up the scale of these developments, of the technology that we need. But there is also a misconception, and you refer to it in your introduction, is that, for example, the design of green buildings is expensive. Well, actually, it isn't. If you design it in from the start, it can actually be at the same cost of a regular building or less expensive. So that is one of the things that are the misconception. For example, many of the investments that we need in green buildings, the electrification through heat pumps, as an example, those have paybacks of less than 5 years, specifically in India. So we can actually move, for example, gas boilers to heat pumps in a very cost-effective way. Now, the other thing is that from development banks like the IFC, the World Bank, but also from some India banks, you have green bonds. But for our sector, the ticket sizes of these green bonds are too big. I was talking about the many SMEs we have in our network, and actually very often the minimum ticket sizes to get those green bonds for our asset owners, they are too big. So that is one of the things which from the tourism sector would be a call to the government and to the development banks and the banks that are involved in this. Please make it adjusted to the sectors where you have big networks of SMEs. And maybe one final point I want to make. It's been a question out and about here about demand, and we have talked about creating the demand for sustainable solutions. And actually, if you look at hotels, for example, Radisson, we touch 5 million customers every year. So talk about creating that sustainability consciousness, we have an opportunity. And we try to make it easy to stay green. And we do that to B2C and B2B, because it's very important to influence how people think, how they consume, and how they are part of the solution and part of driving that revenue to sustainable solutions. So we make it easy in meetings by offering 100% carbon compensated meetings in all our events around the world. And we also do that through collaboration in the hotel industry, where we have defined an entry-level sustainable stamp called Hotel Sustainability Basics, which is actually verified by third parties, so it can be trusted by consumers. So also on that demand side, we see that it creates the pull that we need to then generate the drive for net zero and the investments in net zero in our businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Let me quickly answer the questions posed. First, to your questions, some examples how we look at sustainability and opportunity besides renewable energy. The first example I can tell that most of the waste which comes from iron making, which is called slag, which used to be wasted, now we sell it to make it cement. So that's one example. And by the way, that is how JSW cement is the greenest cement in the world. We have less than 200 kg per ton of, CO2 emission per ton of cement, while the world average is 650, right? That's. The second example, carbon itself as asset. I told we are running a 100 TPD carbon capture utilization project. We are selling it for beverage applications, right? We are looking how we can use the carbon cycle and use that as a product and recirculate even in the process. That's the second example. Third example, we use a lot of waste. Like for example, we convert it to manufactured sand and sell it, right? That replaces natural sand, environmentally good, but we also generate revenue, right? We get a lot of waste gases, and that we use both gases and pressure, waste pressure. We convert it to energy, and almost 40% of my energy need comes from these waste gases and energy. We are also estimating if I can capture all the gases which is from 70 degree to 200 degree, which are unable technically right now, I can save at least 1 crore per factory a day, right? That's the impact. Third example I'll tell, I talked about change management, people change management we called SEED program, which by the way got rewarded as the change maker in the COP28. We saved last year 500 crore by that project. Not only we reduced emissions, we saved money because this is all about efficiency improvement. So I can give a lot of examples. Coming to your second question, are we open to make collaboration with startup? Of course, we do startup horizon scanning always. We look for those disruptive technology to come up, and we are open and we are working. Besides with the Educational Institute, we look for those startups to come out because I believe they are the future solutions. Now coming back to your question quickly, I think you have put two questions. The first question I'll answer as a CSO, how my time should go and how it is going. See, for that you need to understand how the business runs. And my philosophy, business run in 3 factors: greed, fear, recognition. These are the 3 factors which drives business. So making money always drives business faster. So as a Chief Sustainability Officer, if I can help in driving the business strategy to find opportunity, that is where I spend a lot of time to talk to all the senior CXO level CEOs, and my job is to work with CEOs to find opportunity to adjust the business model for the transformation. That's important. The next point you talked about, fear, that is compliance. Anyway, we have to do. I don't see that's a rocket science. Last point, we should look good. At the end I get recognition. CII gives me a recognition, that's good. I feel good. So this is in that order actually business runs. So therefore, as a CSO, we need to adjust this philosophy to drive strategies. On the just transition which you talked about, the Paul Talbot, which Tata Steel is facing. See, in India, we are in an advantage position in the sense our steel sector is growing. So we are putting a lot of transition technology. In fact, day before yesterday on the Vishwakarma Puja, we inaugurated the largest blast furnace in the world, right? By putting that, we believe that is a transition technology which will not only reduce the cost, but it will make a lot of people employment. Even in the electric transition, if it happens, I'm already running 30% of my productions through electric routes. So we believe we'll continue to generate employment rather than losing people. We are looking for people. And second thing, we are consciously looking for skill upgradement. That's our process. If Kokobun becomes obsolete after 20 years, we'll absorb them in somewhere else. If you look at the group, we are growing from nowhere 25 years before, we are a $24 billion group. So we are looking at mobility. JSWMG motor, we are looking at EV transportations. So we are looking at various cleaner sectors of businesses. So there is a good opportunity, and what I can assure you, we are consciously doing that to take care of our people, right? Coming to your last question, I think Inge has already responded to you. But there will be always elements of technology and finances. I always call there is 3 types of technological move it happens. One, technology which is currently financially viable. No brainer, everybody must use. And I always get surprised when people do not use those technology which are financially viable. But they must use. Second bucket, technology which is proven, but they are not financially viable. Believe it, we need to work on that because we have to make this financially viable. We have seen many examples, whether it is semiconductor sector, whether it is a renewable sector, any sector you say, it is going to happen. We need little bit of push, and that is why I am a proponent of viability gap funding to make that happen. The third kind of technology, startups, they need hand-holding. They need ecosystem because they are the future. So we need to look at that. So we need to look at these 3 buckets and do the collaboration rightly. Thank you.
Thank you. Some last words from you, James.
Well, I'm going to run an experiment again to end it, because much as we talk about corporate, my area is to make it very personal, and both the CSOs here talked about demand side. So let me ask you a question. If I said that if you paid 500 rupees a month for the next 8 years, you can be net zero for the rest of your life. 500 rupees a month, 500, that's it. For the next 8 years, you can be net zero for the rest of your life. How many would do that? Okay, see, interesting, not all. What if I told you that number was 2,200? Fewer hands. I think this idea that it is going to cost, but there is a point at which we are willing to bear the brunt that is needed for the change is incredibly important. One of the things we've discovered in our work is the cost is actually minimal. The number is actually less than 500. That's the real number. And imagine that, right? For a small step, we could make a big difference.
Thank you. On that positive note, we close this session. Thank you for a very illuminating session. We will not have a break. We will start the next session immediately, please. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.